call this regular meeting to order of the Jamestown Public School Board. It's April 4th, 2022 at 5:15 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room at the middle school. I'd like to recognize all those who are in the audience today. And please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Diane, would you read the school board norms?
Certainly. The board developed norms are to share and respect varied opinions and speak with a united voice once a decision has been reached, to prudently prioritize resources in a student-centric manner that aligns with the district's strategic plan, to exhibit a mindset of continuous improvement through adequate preparation for meetings and a commitment to board education, to commit to assessing board effectiveness to ensure high-quality governance for the staff, students, and community of Jamestown.
Thank you, Diane. No public communication today. Does the board wish to declare any conflicts of interest today? Okay. Moving forward to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Roger, second by Melissa. Any discussion? Jason, go ahead. Yep.
I do have, not that I want these pulled off, but I do have some general questions on the open enrollment. Can we just address those as questions without taking them off the?
Is it just a general topic question, or does it have to specifically one of the 1 through 9?
It's nothing specific about any of them.
Maybe during the superintendent's report might be a good time to ask that. So,
Okay.
Aaron, did you have anything to add? No, good. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Moving on to our regular meeting. No recognition, no correspondence tonight. Letter C, Board Education, Political Competency, School Nursing Partnership. And we have Deb Fisher here from Central Valley Health District. And
I want to introduce all of you guys.
go ahead and introduce yourselves. And
Yeah, thank you for having us. My name is Deb Fisher, and this is Kim Lee. She is the Director of Nurses at Public Health. And we just wanted to give you guys a chance to kind of meet her. She's never been to one of your board meetings, and so, hello. Yeah, glad to have you. She took over as the Director of Nurses 2 years ago. Marcia Bollingberg had been there how long?
30 years.
Yeah, 30 years, so. She's done a good job because she started taking over in 2020, so, right?
Yeah.
Right. You can stand up here with me if you wish, okay? So one thing that's wonderful is thank you for the invite to kind of educate you guys on what the school nurse job does and our partnership with Central Valley. When I asked Robin Isler, our director, to look back, Jamestown Public Schools and Central Valley have had a partnership since the 70s, okay, in one way, shape, or form. So I think that's wonderful. I just wanted to say I've been a nurse for 20 years. I also taught up at the health careers for 7 years for a while, doing the health sciences, all through Central Valley. But I do remember a lot of older generations remember what they were doing when Mr. Kennedy got shot. I remember what I was doing on 9/11, and that was school screenings at Roosevelt School. Okay, so that's how that sticks into my mind. So I've got a definition for you guys there on your sheets. I handed out 3 sheets for you of just the role of the school nurse, and that's through the National Association for School Nurses, and it's also, some of the information is from DPI, North Dakota DPI handout. We specialize in special nursing care, where public health practitioners, school nurses are aware of social needs, social determinants for health care, partners with families and communities, and help students and staff. It says students, but I like to say staff too, because know their self-worth, be there for them, help them out in any way they can, okay? So annually, we do all the staff in services, or I organize with them. And last year I got to in-service 262 educators prior to school, which is wonderful for me because also having worked at the Career and Tech Center, it's nice because they were my peers at one time. So I recognize a lot of the faces and things like that. So it tends to work out good regarding any of the medical care. They've seen my face before. They're not necessarily afraid to ask questions, which I like. Okay. I'm also authorized through the Minnesota State Community College to test out any of your staff that's new, or the secretaries. I go through Joe Hegland and test them out for giving any medicines in the schools in the process with that after they've taken the course. Okay. Last year I only had one of those. It's been Washington School that I've done the most in the last couple of years since I was back at school nursing. We do vision screenings, and the numbers for that this last year for 2021, we screened 824 and we referred about 185 students. Okay, so that's all through all the grade schools. So that's a great number, I think. Okay, we used to do a lot more in the schools, but it took us a long, long time. And the way we do with this vision machine now is really wonderful because we work with the eye doctors and it's pretty right on. Anybody we refer through that Plus Optics machine usually needs glasses. Okay, so there's not a lot of false positives with that. Flu shot clinics we had in the schools. We gave 418 in the school settings when we went to those. We also went into the schools and gave COVID booster shots. We gave about 71 in the school settings there. And then in January, February, March, I kind of had to stretch it out, but I say we, but this part was me. 4th grade, 5th grade growth and development, okay? For those students, we get a lot of questions. These kids are quite knowledgeable, they think, in their age and time. So it's kind of nice when you have a medical person going in, kind of trying to state the correct terms, help them get straight on what it is their thoughts might be regarding some of this stuff, okay? Not just what they've been told. I worked with the middle school counselors and social worker, and they asked me to come in for 7th grade this year. Guess we had some body hygiene issues, so that was a good undertaking. I saw, let's see, 172 there for the 7th graders right in this exact room. So overall, we served about 229 females for growth and development and about 158 males between 4th, 5th, and 7th grade. So now in April and May, I work with the schools. I'll set up everything for next fall so it can be kind of on our regular large calendars regarding the school screenings right away, so nobody has to wonder when those are. And then there's really not, like, everybody knows how busy they are, especially in the fall. We don't have to try to cram something in, okay? If we have to change, that's okay, but at least we know what's going or coming, okay? Throughout the school year, I visit middle school every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. The high school, Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, and then the grade schools each get a day in there. And I believe now for this next year, if you guys approve, we'll offer to come in on a Fridays for the mornings too. Where I see the need the most and where I see the most kids is obviously in the middle school. A lot of our issues is they're not eating, headaches, stomach aches, just general anxiety. My first questions to them, have you eaten? Is your homework done? Is your schoolwork done? No tests you're worried about today, no peer encounters. Sometimes it's peer encounters. It's just truly, how are they gonna get through the day and what are they gonna do? So I address those anxiety questions, and if they do say that, next thing I do is ask if they see a counselor. Have they spoken with the counselor at the middle school before? And we can make some of those connections that way, but, okay. It's been eye-opening for me because 2020 was COVID. I was the COVID queen, okay? Jupiter, right? And so I've gotten to do more in the schools and see these kids are more comfortable and the staff is more comfortable with my face now. And so they'll send them to me and ask. So that's been great. In the schools so far to date, actually this was like as of Friday, I've seen about 200 kids. I've referred 21 of them. Sent about 31 of them home because that's what I also try to do is talk them into staying in school, not going home, better education, taking care of themselves, and then return to class. So it's about a 77% I've returned to the class, okay? When you look at that sheet that I gave you regarding what school nursing can do, attendance is a big issue, I think. You know, this district has always just had one, and that's a conflict that I have, or not a conflict, but a challenge towards the back of your page, is I'm the only nurse for 2,132 students. all right? But we kind of remedied that a little bit this year, didn't we, Mr. Lecht? Which is wonderful. And the board, you guys approved for the e-care program up at Louis L'Amour. Wonderful situation regarding diabetics up at that school, and the staff had done a great job. But just that consistency and having a nurse on the background, on the backside of that has been really nice. Plus, it's a plus for the other students in that school. So what a great idea you can't be everywhere. One nurse can't be everywhere, and those students deserve to have those opportunities to be checked on, okay? Attendance, like I said, is an issue. I have a great relationship with my secretaries at the middle school here, especially the kids that are poor attendance. They'll actually give me a heads up. Deb, so-and-so is coming down. They're at their 10 days. They want to go home every other day. Please don't send them home unless they really need to medically go home. Okay? And that's a great relationship because I don't know all these kids here. They do, and they see them a lot. Okay, so time away from their services and sending them to me, it's easier for them. Sometimes they see those kids every day, all day. Just kind of depends who they are. Academics, students that are healthy, they're ready to learn. So I just even brought that up at our office, that at the middle school specifically, because I saw a lot of kids, they don't get a lot of food. A lot of these kids don't eat, even though the school supplies that, they don't have time, or they don't have the resources at their home. So we got a lot of granola bars, different things like that donated from our staff or different people, and we brought them to the middle school, okay? And other schools try to do that too. It's the first thing I say, have you eaten breakfast? Okay, how do you expect my car run if I did not give it breakfast? Or gas? No, it won't go anywhere, will it? Well, how do you expect your brains to work for you all day and your bodies and physical activities if you're not gonna feed it? So I really like getting some of those relationships. I'm also on, I was part of the LICE committee this year for the school board with that. Have you guys looked at that yet? No? Okay, that's coming. And then I'm on the James Valley Career and Tech Health Science Advisory Board, which is twice a year. Okay. So academics, time saving for principals, teachers, staff, they can know that they're comfortable, send them down to the nurse. Staff student wellness, middle schools, counselors, social workers are doing a great job trying to get some resources for females and males in their bathrooms. Okay, just accessible so they don't have to ask to actually take them. And so part of that 7th grade education led into some of that too. So I think that's a wonderful thing. Teaching that responsibility for them and just being responsible for themselves too and others. Accountability for schools, any legal or emergency type issues, immunization assistance. At each school, I've helped the staff get set up so that they can look through the immunizations, so they can know they're up to date. Amy's got me on the list where you get anybody new into the district, then I can check the immunizations. That's been nice for us, for compliance, and for you guys. Okay. I can send out letters as reminders. So we've worked really well that way, getting me on the list. I've appreciated that for sure. And in Power School, I've made sure I went through this year when I was putting in all the school screenings, I checked all the immunizations and made sure that they were up to date and in Power School. So anytime someone looks in there, it should all be there for you, at least the ones that I know about, okay? So that's a good thing too, because that goes, then we found stuff in the school system that was actually there that wasn't in the state system. So then that allows me to go, our staff to go put that into the state system in case they move anyplace else and so forth, so. And then distribution of resources, obviously public health resources, guidelines, school exposure letters, up to date, COVID changes, obviously that was a lot back in the day. I like collaborating with the counseling departments, the PTOs, public health updates, that comes through all of us. We do our vaccines coming up and our sports physicals and so forth. So the other challenge, like besides being the only one, and we talked about the e-care, is just being available when needed. Your secretaries in your buildings have done a phenomenal job, whether you realize that or not. They are, between all their regular duties, they have kids coming in and out constantly with a lot of it in my book is more I don't want to say psychological, but TLC, just TLC. They recognize their faces, or maybe they want to go home and they talk them into, need to stay home, you're at these so many days. So they do a phenomenal job. I just really want you guys to know that. Is there any questions that you can think of? Did I go like 20 minutes or what did I do? Yes. Good, I talk fast. If you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to call us, right?
Diane, yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
You mentioned sports physicals. Are you just checking to see that they have gone to a doctor and do have their sports physical?
Go ahead, Kim.
We offer them at our office, so we send out the mass messaging through your system, and then it alerts parents so that they know that they're offered at our facility for a certain amount of fees. So, I mean, they're at other places too, the clinics, but we let them know that we're open and ready to start doing sports physicals.
Well, I probably should have known that, but it's really important because I know the doctors get backed up with
They do.
those certain
Yep.
times a year. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Gail, did you have? Go ahead, Gail.
I just want to thank you, as a school counselor, I couldn't have done my job without the school nurses. They are an invaluable partner. I had you guys on speed dial, and we worked as a team.
You do.
And I just appreciate it. And also, I also am the daughter of a public health nurse, and I know the passion and care you give to that profession, and I'm just really, really proud of our school's partnership with you. And anything you need from us, please let us know. I have a real soft spot for nurses.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I was amazed because I was curious how far back our partnership went to the 70s. I think that's wonderful. One way or another, we're all serving your staff, your students, and your community, and that's what we're about too. Yeah.
This is maybe a comment. Back when I went to school in Valley City, we had a public health nurse who was an institution, and she also did a lot of our the sex talks.
Oh, yes.
And all that, and we nicknamed her Sperma Irma,
Oh, nice.
and it was just
No.
She was, but I way back when.
Yep.
That public health nurse. I mean, I don't know how she did all she did either, but from way back in the 60s and 70s, you guys have been doing amazing.
We used to teach HIV in the school systems.
Well, that's, I think, where she got those nicknames.
So, yep.
But
Yep.
yeah, you are a great, and I don't think people know all that you do for a community too.
People don't know everything public health in itself does.
No.
Unless you've needed one of our services, you might know that service, but you don't know everything else, so. Yep. So thank you. Thanks for allowing me to do what I do.
Hold
Yes,
on,
sir.
Jason has one question here.
So other than cloning you, is there anything that you would like us to start working towards to make your role more efficient even?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. I truly, the partnerships I have throughout the schools, I think are great. They know how to reach us. If they can't reach me, they reach our office. Other than lots and lots of money, to be able to have a school nurse at each school for the kids, which has always been, I've been at public health 21 years now this month, and yeah, so. But I appreciate the question.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much, Deb and Kim. We
Thank
appreciate it. And
you.
Kim, welcome to your first school board meeting of the Jamestown Public Schools.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, moving forward, reports. Dr. Leck, Superintendent's report, please.
Thank you. You do have my written report. There's quite a few of these areas that have their own agenda topics, so I'll skim over those. Wanted to draw your attention to the bottom of page 1 and into page 2, a section on just some potential personnel considerations that we're going to have to wade through in the next, as we plan for next year. I'll start with Title I. Over the last 10 years, I think those that have been on the board for any length of time, we've talked about Louis L'Amour. They vacillate between eligible for Title I and not eligible for Title I. It's a poverty calculation. And so they have been Title I, they've been ineligible for Title I. What we've done in the district for supplemental services is if they're an elementary school that does not qualify for Title I, we create a lookalike program. We call it supplemental services. So when schools like Gustner and Louis L'Amour are not Title I schools, are not able to be funded with federal dollars, Title I dollars, we supplant that or supplement it. We use supplemental services. We just pay out of the general fund a lookalike program. And so, like I said, over the last 10 years, Louis L'Amour has been Title I. They've not been Title I, but we've always had supplemental services in those schools like Gustner and Louis L'Amour because we know that just because Title I isn't available, that federal funding isn't available, it doesn't mean that student needs don't exist. So we make sure that we have a lookalike program. We are in the stage now where Louis L'Amour is back currently they are Title I. They will lose that status next year. This was something we anticipated. We hoped would change. It did not. We were also hoping for some waivers that we hoped would come as a result of the pandemic, but those have not come. And so now we're in a position where we are going to return to 3 schools being eligible for Title I and 2 being general funded supplemental programs. So that does create some challenge for us as we look to use federal dollars as efficiently as we can. I know in many districts, especially larger districts, our Title I teachers move every year or multiple times in their career following funding. We haven't been in a position where we've had to do that. Actually, we haven't moved any out of Title I into another Title I program in the 10 years that I've been here, and we haven't had to do that. We've tried to hold off on that because we think consistency is important. But now we're to a point where that does need to happen. And so I did have a meeting with our elementary title programs, talked through some of our challenges, some of our rules and regulations. I did ask them to fill out a survey to allow us to get some perspective. So when we do have to move people, we do understand if in a perfect world, we still have to make decisions, but it's helpful for us to know in a perfect world what would make sense for their family. For example, if I work in one building, but my kids go to school in another building, if I do have to move, could I move to that building where my kids go to school? Things like that, that we want to make sure that we understand the dynamics of our staff and making sure, we could have made changes as soon as we submitted our consolidated application. That's where our title funding goes. That would have been about 2 weeks before the school year started. With everything our staff went through in the pandemic, asking them 2 weeks before the school year, half of them to change buildings was not a morale change that I felt was appropriate. But we do have to consider those changes as they come, and hopefully we do this once and we aren't in a position where we need to make these changes again, at least anytime in the near future, but it is something that we need to consider. So when we look at our Title I funding remaining in Lincoln, Roosevelt, and Washington, what does that mean? Well, it means we get the same district allocation. Now it's just spread out over 3 schools instead of 4. And so there's greater allocations that go into those schools. Those schools have carryover. And so when that allocation is now spread over 3 schools instead of 4, the potential for that allocation and that carryover to be even greater, again, that just creates an inefficiency of funding. And we have to consider the cost to the general fund as well as we look at staffing now a supplemental program for another building. So now that Louis, again, returns, so those are considerations that we're going to have to make. These are not contract issues. They aren't anything that's going to come before the board for transfers because they're continuing contracts already. But I wanted the board to be aware of the potential for this change and just some of the rationale. And with that, because there may be questions, I'll pause for questions on Title I.
Jason?
So do you anticipate having a timeline as far as when those decisions will be made for staffing?
Good question. We did talk, again, I shared this earlier, but we did meet with all the Title I instructors and all the principals at the elementary level. We did share a timeline with them. I'd anticipate probably by the end of this month or early May to have decisions related to placements for next year. And again, the reason we didn't want to do it earlier is just because the transition's so close to the school year. I thought that would have been it would have been an unfortunate thing, I think, culturally and from a morale standpoint to do for staff.
Do you have a follow-up, Jason?
The part of your report that talked about the rules and regulations regarding carryover, and that complicates our issue now that we have two schools that, or one more school that don't qualify. I guess the rules and regulations are in regards to a dollar amount or a percentage?
Yeah, how much we could carry over. So the rules are you can, if you look at your allocation, 15% of that can be carried over every year. You get a waiver every 3 years for 50%. We were getting ESSER waivers where those percentages didn't matter. We were hoping, or I was hoping for that to occur again. Just to give us even more time before we had to shift staff around. But we're at the point now where that ESSER waiver isn't going to happen, even though I think that it probably should. But that isn't going to happen, so now we're in this position.
Go ahead, Jason.
So in regards to the 15%, I just want to get a concept of what our philosophy is on that, because do we try to maximize the 15% every year carryover? Am I misunderstanding? I just want to make sure that, the funds that are allocated to those schools, we're also maximizing those dollars for those kids. I mean, I understand carryover. Can you just talk us through kind of our rationale and philosophy on, if there is one, as far as do we try to target a number of carryover, or is it dependent on the year?
Yep. Good question. No, it depends on the year. The 15% is just an allowable carryover. There are schools like Louis L'Amour in which we already have to subsidize 20% of just the teacher. There are other buildings that have multiple paras that can also be paid for through Title I. One of the rules and regulations that we struggle with sometimes is paras, where we would love to be able to hire additional paras with some of our dollars, but the limitation is Title I only allows for as many paras as you have teachers. So you couldn't have one teacher and 4 paras paid out of title, even though that would make sense. But we can't do that because that's not an allowable expenditure. But no, to answer your question, we don't target carryover, it simply happens.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, continue.
Okay, so the next personnel area that I wanted to bring awareness to the board was in kindergarten. So right now, what I reference is right now, in my report, 77 is our current enrollment for next year. At least when I wrote this report, right now we're in the mid-80s. That is very comparably very low for what we typically would see. At this time last year, we're at 124, so even with an additional few, that's still 40 plus less than where we typically would be. If you look at, we know that we had a kindergarten opening that's made available through a resignation last meeting. That gets us at 7. I would certainly at this point not anticipate hiring that position as things currently stand. Maybe things change and there's 50 students that just haven't registered yet, but that's probably fairly unlikely. I think we're looking closer at what would be the appropriate number of sections. Typically, we have 8. In a few cases in my time, there has been 9. We have never had below 8 in an elementary section in my 9 years here, but it looks like that will be the case next year, and I think that we could be as low as 6 depending on how registrations come. And so the reason I put these two items together is we currently have 7 sections, so that may mean the need to transfer from one position to another position if that comes to pass. And we just don't know that. I'm bringing it for awareness of the board. That as it stands right now, it sure appears that 6 sections would be the appropriate number based on what we see right now. That could change, but I'm certainly suggesting that we wouldn't be filling that 8th section yet until things clear up a little bit more, at least we get a little bit more clarity. And I would say it's probably 50-50 that we might be looking at 6 sections. So again, I'll pause for questions if you have any.
Go ahead, Gail.
Just a couple. Would we be looking at least maintaining one kindergarten in each building? Or so that each school had a kindergarten? That's the first question.
Yeah, so we look at, we haven't made a decision on what that might look like. The challenge comes within boundaries. You know, for example, if one section, or if one school has 30 kindergarten students within their boundary and another has 3, asking students from school A to go to school B that's outside their boundary, or would you just keep 2 sections in one building? I think we need to operate within the boundaries that the board has established, and so that might mean a school with a very low enrollment. We don't have a kindergarten program in that school, depending on what the enrollments look like in terms of boundaries. I think that's the most efficient way to look at it. It becomes much more challenging if you're looking at 6 or 7.
So was the 121 last year an outlier and the 77 more normal? Or is the 77 an outlier that we have? Do we have any projections of where some of those, have we seen like a huge increase in some of our private kindergartners, a huge increase in them seeking out a smaller school? Or so some of those trends so we can kind of anticipate what it is? Or if we do see them flowing out into others, are there things that we need to be doing to make this the place they want to be?
So that's a hard question to answer. I can tell you when we did an enrollment study, this would look to be an outlier because the enrollment study that was done did not show anything like this. What I would say is more likely is you're seeing a little bit of transition or it's just an outlier year. I think it's hard to say what the future is going to bring, if this is an outlier or the new normal, but right now it's an outlier from anything we've seen or anything that we projected.
Aaron, go ahead.
Just a question on timing, what you expect to see for, as far as making a call in that area of 6 versus 7?
In terms of the 6 versus 7, I would say in the same time we're making a decision around Title I, we're going to be making a decision in kindergarten with sections, so within the next month or so, I would say. And if we see a spike in enrollment, maybe some that just have not yet enrolled, then we would look to add that section back sometime over the summer.
So if we have any parents out there that haven't enrolled their students, we encourage them to do so.
Call Central Office 252-1950, speak to Amy and set up a registration, please.
We would appreciate it. It would definitely help with planning and across the entire district. Melissa, go ahead. I'll get you to Jason.
Just a question as far as, are we going to continue advertising for that kindergarten position then that the resignation had come in on? And just hold that as just in case, or how are we going to handle that?
I wanted to speak to the board first, and at that point now I would remove that for now.
Jason, go ahead.
So the decision to reduce the sections of kindergarten and/or where those sections will be are all done. Does any of that come before the board?
No, it would happen. I would share for awareness where we're going. Again, my focus would be on the enrollment boundaries that the board has set, and we would determine based on enrollment boundaries. You know, rather than displacing 15 kids to go to one school, you would displace 3 kids to go to a different. You would just make the decision that makes the most sense in terms of what the boundaries you've already established.
And I think we probably want to keep in mind too, those kindergartens could potentially have siblings already within those boundaries of that boundary school. So go ahead, Jason.
Right, I was going to bring up, there are a lot of variables that go into this, and it's not an easy decision. The only thing I ask is that we and you will keep us informed, but we really try to maintain, because these are the things that can get people anxious, parents, other stakeholders. So, I just ask that we're transparent and that we're updated as timely as possible per Mr. Roberts. And that's just all I can ask.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring it before the board for awareness now, and I'll just continue to update as we need to.
Go ahead, Jason.
Can I ask my consent agenda question now?
Yep, sure.
It dealt with the open enrollments, and a couple questions. I noticed that we approve, or the consent agenda was to review 9 open enrollment applications under the consent agenda, and then later in new business, we're accepting an open enrollment into the district. What's the difference there?
So good question. If you remember, I did a board education on this, I think a few years ago, but we put a review of open enrollees, those that are open enrolling into another district. We put it as review, even though we aren't required to do so. The board isn't required to act on an open enrollment into another district. That is a right afforded to a family by North Dakota Century Code. We review them just because I feel it's appropriate for the board to know those that are requesting and have been approved for open enrollment in another district. You act on the ones that are open enrolling into Jamestown. That is where your approval lies. So that's the difference between those two.
Thank you. And then, so we're not,
Do you have a follow-up?
we're not approving them to go out of the district. We're reviewing them, and then we have to vote on the one coming in. So my other question was, and it's kind of an education thing too, for pre-K, is that considered a grade level in the state?
So I think it was 4 years ago that the Department of Public Instruction said, and I think this is in the board memo, education memo too, that I created, but it's a good question. Now that some schools have public pre-K, the department has requested that that boards act on pre-Ks as well when they're going into a public pre-K program.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Gail, go ahead.
Kind of building on that, have we done any looking into seeing that with those places that have those pre-Ks, is that maybe serving as a transition for the people to continue on into school at that thing? And let's promote universal pre-K so we can have that here. That would be a wonderful thing. But I just wonder if that is sometimes a place where we might have that juncture where we lose a student.
Well, it's absolutely, it is a great recruitment for our surrounding communities to have public pre-K. I think the challenge becomes putting a youngster on a bus for that many miles and minutes. Can be a challenge for many of our families, but yep, public pre-K is an option. There's other limitations that as a district we would need to consider, cost, space, things like that. But it is absolutely a recruitment for many families, and that could be a factor why we see a number of open enrollments out into the rural communities because of that pre-K component. It's absolutely an enrollment strategy for those that are surrounding us. So it is absolutely something to consider, and I'm a big proponent of universal pre-K programming too. But again, I think there's more to it than just, is that a good program to have? You need to be able to have space and staffing and a budget to support too.
Any other question? Jason, go ahead.
Is there any potential legislative action to address that?
I don't think so. It's been brought up many times to support. I think North Dakota is one of the few that doesn't fully support universal pre-K. The middle ground from the legislature has been to support, that it's possible and that there's some dollars associated, but not to fully fund a program.
Anything else? Okay, continue on.
Okay, so next on my report, the facility projects, and you'll talk more about these, but I just wanted to lay the stage for when the GMP comes back up. As a facility committee, we met on March 29th. This was the more challenging. We've always known that this was the decision. This was the project that was going to create the biggest challenge for us. just because of the ambiguity initially of what we were going to do in that space and knowing that we were dealing with this one last, escalating costs. And so trying to find the right project and how to fund that project at the middle school. So this was always going to be a challenge. To that end, we had a base bid and then 6 alternates. You know, all those alternates designed to get us a little bit more information and help us package to make sure that we could hone in on what we really felt needed to happen at Jamestown Middle School. So when we reviewed the bid results as a facilities committee, we were very happy. If you remember at Gusner, those projects were significantly higher than what we had hoped they would be, a lot of that coming down to mechanical costs. And the results from that Mike will go through, you know, in a little bit, were significantly lower than what we had anticipated. So which is great news. It helped to balance the higher than expected costs at Gusner. So we looked at that base bid, and then we had, like I said, 6 alternates. We wanted to focus on alternate 1 and alternate 2, so that's the GMP that's going to come before the board, is the base bid plus alternates 1 and 2. Alternate 1, operable windows. If we're re-windowing the middle school, we want to make sure that the staff can open at least one of those windows and they're, you know, to continue to get fresh air in like they have now. The second was we had broken down different areas again just to see, knowing that this could be a challenge, we wanted to look at the different areas of space, maybe thinking we would have to do it on a phased project. But alternate 2 provides the same cooling in the Delta wing that would be in every other classroom. So if you can do alternate 1 and 2, that would be, you'd provide a consistent project scope for every instructional room in the building. The other projects that weren't included, the alternates that weren't included, included the air exchange, cooling replacement in the gymnasium, some additional cooling, added cooling in common areas like the front foyer out here. We had a bid, or we had an alternate for replacement unit ventilators. Those are individual unit ventilators in each of our classrooms. We wanted to see what the cost would be. We saw what that is, and I think what the facilities committee looked at is we can really build that into our capital projects plan and do a little bit of that every year instead of trying to do it all at one time. So that was one of the alternates that we looked at as well. I wanted to draw your attention to a breakdown, and this is a pretty basic breakdown. I spent all day today working on an updated capital projects plan for the facilities committee to look through on the 12th when we meet again. This kind of assumes that there's no other costs for facilities in our district, and we know that's not going to be the case. We have other things that come from the building fund, and so the facilities committee is going to look at that in a greater detail and make some decisions. But that breakdown gives you a good idea of what of how we're going to need to break down between those general fund savings that we've already targeted through ESSER, the 2020 certificates of indebtedness, and then the building fund as well. So those are all areas that feed into that breakdown. Again, that's a little more rudimentary, more basic look, but it's something that we do have to consider. For the sake of the audit later in the meeting, and I just wanted to touch on this just for clarity, as Sally and I were talking about the 2020 certificates of indebtedness, we want to make sure that the board takes action on that, so we're really clear in the board minutes in terms of what those dollars are spent on, because when we went through and refinanced that, it has to be very clear, and we want for our auditors to be able to look and say, these were the projects that you raised those dollars for, this is what was done. And so if we can clear that up in terms of a motion, that gives us direction in the facilities committee when we're planning to make sure that we have separated those dollars appropriately, and then Sally can account for them separately as well. But just for the sake of the board, that means those 2020 certificates of indebtedness were sold for the $2 million contribution to the Hanson Athletic Complex, the architectural fees for all of these projects, the Jamestown High School Athletic Edition, which is project number 1, and then the remaining costs, around $100 and some thousand as I estimated, for the fire alarm and suppression improvement. The fire alarm and the sprinklers at Gusner. So with that, I would stand for questions.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Anything from the Facilities Committee that I missed?
Yeah. Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, just to reiterate, when we got into this process and breaking down the projects across the high school, Gusner, the middle school, it became pretty clear that the middle school was going to be a challenge, just in the fact that, I don't know, Mike had explained it a few different ways, but there's a lot of different systems trying to fight each other and work together at the same time. So how that all comes together was, going to be difficult, and that's why we kind of structured the bid to provide us with those alternates and give us some options to look at in terms of what is the scope of work that we're trying to actually do here within the budget constraints of the district. So, and that's why it came up with 6 different alternates. It gave us some options that we could consider as we went through that, and so we can actually move forward with, the main priority, getting that air quality and cooling into the classrooms. And then we'll have to look at how to deal with the other items that are still out there, but within the constraints of, the regular annual budget for the year, so.
Thank you, Aaron. Jason?
Could you circle back, please? Did I miss the discussion on wellness, behavioral health, and life skills instructor? Were you going to mention anything now or during that motion?
Well, it's I can certainly talk about it now. It is on your agenda already. If you remember, we've struggled in special education to find additional supports. This position, this FTE right now, it's been an unfilled position. We haven't been able to find this position. Mr. Gaylor reached out to me. They had some internal conversations around, how can we fill that FTE instead of just waiting for somebody to apply. He felt like if they created this position, this could help to lessen the burden for our special educators a little bit, managing some 504s as our students transition off IEPs onto 504s. Somebody needs to manage those, and additional support still can be had between Blue Jay Academy and the resource room, that this was a better use of a FTE rather than sitting unfilled. So that's really where that position comes from.
Would it be filled by someone who has a teaching background at that point? So they
Yes.
would be on the teaching schedule?
Correct.
And preferably somebody, if we could find, with some special ed background?
Well, if that's possible, yes.
exist, yeah.
Yep. But that's been our challenge. That's been an unfilled position. We filled this with extended contracts. The prospects of filling it don't look great, and so we have to think a little bit outside the box, try to innovatively think about how else can we support our teachers and support the needs of our students.
Aaron?
There was one open item that, from our facilities committee on as far as the power distribution. Did that get resolved, and if so, what did that look like?
So I think Mike can maybe talk about that when we get in, but the good news is so they're going to, when we complete this project, the transformer that they'll bring in has capacity for all of the alternates. And so what that means is we'll have electrical capacity for all of these projects, from alternate 1 to the base bid, all the way through alternate 6. We have electrical capacity for all of those projects now. So if we do add that in a later date, we're not going to have to add capacity. Is that your question? Or just the transformer itself? So the transformer itself, working with Otter Tail, I think there's a chance that could be covered, but we did add $15,000 to our contingency in the event it does not. So the good news is when we complete it, we'll have capacity for all of the projects, but we may have to have, we may have some cost associated with that. So like I said, we enhanced our contingency for it.
Gail?
When I read the alternatives, it says that classroom ventilation wasn't accepted. Does it mean we're still seeking out bids for that? Or what does that mean that that one was not accepted?
Cost. We had a fixed cost that we're trying to work into. But again, we have capacity to do that project as part of our capital projects plan if and when we get to the point where we can have that conversation. But that's the gymnasium. That HVAC was for, but that was for the gymnasium.
Okay, and then there was one that was listed as classroom ventilation.
That's the unit ventilators. Those are the individual classroom heaters.
And so that was the one that was rejected?
That was one that was rejected, but we put that as an alternate.
Yep, I saw that.
And that's what I was referencing when I said as part of our capital projects plan, we could do a few of those per year rather than doing them all at one time. So still a priority, it's just, we have to look at what's available in terms of cost. But we wanted to get a sense of how many could we fund. And so we picked the 10 that had the biggest need.
And I would just like to say, I still believe that classroom ventilation is key for so many different things, our asthmatics and
Sure.
allergies.
Yeah, and these
so
are
many things.
yeah,
that would
these are our
improve.
classroom
So
heaters.
And I
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
yeah, but I just wanted to make sure we hadn't have rejected it.
Nope.
No.
Any other, Jason?
And on that note, with the middle school, it was top priority that we got the learning environments cooler. Just because if if it's not a comfortable learning environment, then, and that was a pretty, that was, high on the list. So your comments, no, those aren't off the table. It's just going to have to look different.
Any other questions or comments? Anything else, Dr. Luck, from your report? Did you want to talk about positions? You talked about the one position. Yep,
Just
okay.
the one and
Okay.
the others are.
Okay, on the agenda coming up. Okay, moving forward. Old business E, nothing under old business. New business, number 1, activities. Is there a motion to approve a cooperative agreement with Maple Valley Public Schools in girls swim and dive? Motion by Rogers, second by Gail. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Number 2, building and grounds. A, review of bids and approval of guaranteed maximum price GMP number 4 to include alternates 1 and 2, and that feeds into the informational draft guaranteed maximum price GMP number 4. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Roger, is it second by Jason? We'll have some discussion. Thank you.
Thanks for having us again tonight.
Do you want to just state your name and where you're from for just for the
Sure. My
the
name is
video?
Mike Barsness. I direct pre-construction services for Consolidated Construction.
Jordan Risma, project manager with Consolidated Construction.
Rob and Aaron actually laid it out pretty well for us there. Kind of did my job for me, but we did stress a couple things with the middle school. Primarily around trying to improve the performance of the classrooms with cooling and all that. And it really actually, in my opinion, started a little bit with the windows. A lot of the windows in the 51 wing and running around the 61 and 64 wings are a lot of glass block and very little insulative capacity with that, whether it be cold or warm. And so, what we discussed with the facilities committee, and I've really got to thank them for their willingness to, help us tackle the issues. It's been a challenging year with costs. That was really kind of the primary. Let's start with the windows because now your heating systems are going to work better, and your cooling systems then that we're going to install into those classrooms will also function better as well. And we'll handle some better natural light and some other issues in those classrooms as well. So we started with that and then laid out the alternates in such a way that we could best utilize the funding that we had left for the projects. We received 14 bids on the project. Actually 5 bids for glazing. We were very competitive with replacing the windows. We had a very competitive bid environment there. And C&H Glass out of Bismarck, who we've worked with on other re-window projects, most recently in Beulah at their high school, will be doing the project with us. The key with that is really establishing the delivery date of the windows and how much we want to get ahead safely without getting behind, if I can, say that properly. We, a goal will be to have classrooms done first, to not affect education, late this summer. But a lot of that's going to start on when we can get those windows locked in, which we intend to do right away in the morning, and then just drive through with that. We got a couple bids, 2 bids on the mechanical systems. Dakota Metal Fabrication's the low bidder there, fairly competitive, and they're teamed up with a firm that's more of a specialist in these VRF systems that we're actually using in the classrooms. And then electrical, Jordan Parsons Electric,
Yep.
out of Moorhead, or Fargo Moorhead, is a low bidder. If you recall, we actually had to extend the bids about a week from the 17th to the 24th to give us a little bit more time to recruit bidders. It's been a very busy bidding schedule this spring with not just your project, but several other projects across the state. So in that case, I think that worked out, really well in our favor. And as Rob stated, the bids did come in better than we were expecting them. We were hoping to get the gymnasium heating as well. In that we weren't able to, but we were thinking there might have been a couple other parts we weren't going to get either. So, given our situation, it worked out well. So, the executive summary, which would have been part of your packet, the third column on the right is essentially, now that we're complete, we've gone through our high school, we've established that GMP for that project. Things are underway with Jordan and his team there. Gusner, at our last school board meeting 2 weeks ago, that's now established and contracted. And so now we're down to the middle school itself. The costs that we're seeing, right, that we're projecting for a GMP are $2,820,000 roughly, along with some contract mandated contingency, which includes the re-window, the cooling work in all the classrooms, and the electrical. We do have the new transformer coming in. That transformer, like Rob stated before, is enough to power all of your cooling systems as part of the base bid and the alternate bids for this project. We did a study on your existing transformer, and you're only using about 50 to 60% of the power on that 208 transformer that's sitting down there as well too. So you've got plenty of capacity, for future things that are, above and beyond what we're talking about in this project here too. Cooling is usually what grabs a lot of power. So now we've got that handled here. So that's essentially where we ended up landing. Total construction costs about $6,788,000 for the 3 projects combined. And total project costs, once we pay with design fees and the contingency that Rob talked about, a little over $7.3 million, which was pretty close, within about $15,000 of what we were projecting here a few months ago. So.
You're good. Any questions from the board? A lot of information, but it's coming together nicely. So, Dr. Luck.
Maybe one related comment. I talked before about architecture fees and having conversations with GLG related to, I have talked with them related to fees. I mentioned this last time. Some of what they conducted was a little bit out of scope. And I've had some conversations. I actually, right before we started our meeting, I got an update from them where they've looked at what they've done that was outside of scope. And so that's something that we'll bring to the Facilities Committee on the 12th. We'll have a conversation about where we want to go, and then the Facilities Committee and I will bring a recommendation at the next meeting in terms of how you want to deal with the architectural, the design costs.
Thank you, Dr. Luck. Aaron.
And just to mention one other point too, for these alternates, we do have the designs complete for those so that we can apply those going forward. We don't have to go through a design phase as a part of it. That's already been completed.
Yep, you do. Recommendation would be to just, work with the same designers. And what I would do is I'd call them, say it's next year or 2 years from now. Just call them, have them review that design in case there's a change in mechanical codes Those are usually changing somewhat every couple of years, and just have them recheck that for you, and then, yeah, you should be good to go. So, there's some proactivity to it there as well.
Very good. Any other questions from the board, comments? All right. Thank you. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second for review of bids and approval of guaranteed maximum price GMP number 4 to include alternates 1 and 2 and the subsequent draft guaranteed maximum price GMP number 4 for our information that it feeds into. We've had discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Under Buildings and Grounds, under letter B, approval to direct remainder of 2020 Certificate of Indebtedness to High School Athletic Addition and Gusner Safety Enhancement. Is there a motion? Motion by Roger, second by Gail. Is there any discussion? All those in, oh, Jason?
Could we just quickly clarify, this is to quote-unquote clear the books per se? Could you just talk us real quick through that?
Sure. Good question. When you are, for audit purposes, and maybe Sally, feel free to join in here, but we are very limited in what we can use that for. We have to ensure that what we are coding towards the certificate of indebtedness is what we said we were going to do. And these projects are within the scope of what you said that you were going to use those bonds for.
Okay.
Anything to clear up, Sally?
Yep, good question.
You know, it's just tracking. Just repeating really what Rob said. I mean, you know, it's just tracking, you know, so they say in the minutes that you guys knew, you know, that we weren't coding, okay, we're going to take this and this and this and code it to certificate of indebtedness. It's just, you know, it's in minutes, and we are, because I have to track it separately on the books. So it's in minutes, and the accounting code structure matches what you guys approved.
Any other questions or discussion? So we have a motion and a second to approve, to direct remainder of 2020 Certificate of Indebtedness to High School Athletic Addition and Gusner Safety Enhancements. We have a motion, a second, and discussion. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 3, curriculum assessment and instruction. I don't think we have anything under there. Number 4, finance. A, approval, is there a motion to approve the funding request from Central Valley Health in the amount of $43,000 to provide school nursing services? Motion by Gail, second by Melissa. Discussion, Dr. Luck?
Just a point, I didn't talk about this in my report, but it's $600 higher than it was last year. There was a little reference to it earlier, but Central Valley Health will do a little additional support for us on Fridays.
Any other discussion? Diane?
I just wanted to point out what an incredible bargain we are getting for all the things that she described tonight. So thank you so much to them.
Very much. Any other questions or discussion? So we have a motion and a second for approval of the funding request from Central Valley Health in the amount of $43,000 to provide school nursing services. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Personnel. A, approval to hire Christina Beardsley, JMS Reading and Life Skills Teacher at BABS +0 with a salary of $45,207.77 for the 2022-2023 school year upon successful completion of a background check. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Jason, second by Gail. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Welcome, Christina. B, approval to hire Hannah Lloyd, JHS Fax Teacher at BABS +3 with a salary of $46,297.67 for the 2022-2023 school year upon successful completion of a background check. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Melissa, second by Roger. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Welcome, Hannah. welcome back. Approval to post wellness, behavioral health, and life skills instructor at Jamestown High School for the 2022-2023 school year. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Melissa. Second by Diane. Any discussion? Aaron?
Just more of a general question here. How many open positions do we have currently within the district for the positions?
Let's see. Less than 10, probably 6 right now? 5, 6?
Gail?
I noticed that we're advertising the school counseling position as a guidance counselor, which is kind of an archaic word for what school.
That hasn't changed.
I think we updated that a couple weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, maybe.
For an old school counselor, it's like nails on a chalkboard. Thank you, thank you. I will sleep good tonight.
So that's changed, so yes.
Yeah, I have to promote that whenever I can.
Yep, somebody else brought that up and said, maybe update the
Good. We've had a motion and a second to approve to post the wellness, behavioral health, and life skills instructor at Jamestown High School for the 2022-2023 school year. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. D, is there a motion to approve the 2022 summer school staff contracts? Motion by Aaron. Second by Gail. Any discussion or comments? Jason?
Any major deviation from the norm here? Are we fully staffed, offering pretty much what we've done?
Yep.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the 2022 summer school staff contracts. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Number 6, policies and procedures. A, approval to rescind policy GCC, Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment and Third-Party Research on Student Policy. Is motion by Roger? Or Jason, is it Jason? Roger, okay. And second by Aaron. All those, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. B, approval of the first reading of policy GCC, Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. Is there a motion? Motion by Aaron. Second by Diane. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. C, approval of GCC-AR criteria for considering third-party student surveys and research and subsequent review of amended GCC-E1 model notification of rights under the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. Is there a motion? Motion by Roger. Is there a second? Second by Gail. Any discussion? Go ahead, Gail.
I'm just thinking of some of the things that, as a high school counselor, kids participated in. There were oftentimes surveys when you did AP courses. Would, by allowing the child to participate in that test, would that be that consent or is consent? And it's usually just data where they collect like the highest degree and then they, your one parent did or something like that. So I just don't know, would by participating give that consent, or are they going to have to go through and look to make sure?
So this policy addresses Department of Education surveys. So we do have other surveys that wouldn't quite follow that same level of rigor. But in all cases that we do surveys, we if it's a minor child, we'll send requests home and allow to opt out if they don't participate. Yep. Yep.
Any other discussion? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. D, approval amended FFE, extracurricular participation requirements policy. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Roger. Second by Diane. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. E, approval of amendment FFE-AR1, meals for students participating in extracurricular activities. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Aaron? Second by Dan. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. F, approval of amended ABAC virtual learning because of weather or other conditions. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Roger, second by Melissa. Any discussion? Gail?
Do we have a trigger point where, with storm days, and I like how that was adapted for this, but where, let's say, we would have to change graduation, where we would, have we ever thought about having, what would that trigger be? You know, let's say we get a year like, what was the last really bad year? 2011, I'm thinking had like, so that parents would know that at that point, something like that.
So I'm not sure I understand your question completely, but, you know, we would operate, as I talked, when we address inclement weather in the past, we have a grace day, so we take that first grace day, we make up the next two. After that point, then we look to that flexibility that's provided, or we look to existing calendar days. I know, say for example, we had a series of inclement weather days right before spring break. We might take one less day of spring break so we can have, you know, maximize the amount of days that we have in school. But really, we would have that, a pretty significant amount of flexibility through the days to hours legislation. So we probably wouldn't be in a point where we'd have to delay graduation unless you're talking, you know, flood year or something like that, when you're missing a substantial length of time, you know, beyond 10 days.
Curious if we could maybe in the future look at having that be the trigger for something like virtual learning for all, if it were to create some huge disruption like that. And God forbid we would never have another winter like that. I want them all like last year.
So we have a motion and a second for approval of amended ABAC virtual learning because of weather or other conditions. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 7, tuition, nothing under tuition. 8, open enrollment. A, approval of open enrollment application for a Barnes County North kindergarten student to attend Jamestown Public Schools for the 2022-2023 school year. Is there a motion? Motion by Gail. Second? Second by Jason. Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. 9, other A, election timeline. You can pick up packets at the central office. There's information online. And the due date is when, Sally?
Monday, April 11th at 4 PM, the deadline to apply. We need it, yeah, that's come up fast. It seems like it was. And then for those participant candidates that are running, if they so choose, Wednesday at 4:15 in the central office conference room, we will have a drawing, out of the hat, just drawing your name, your number, so that's your placement on the ballot. So, yeah, for all the interested persons, that is 4 PM Monday, April 11th.
Thank you, Sally. Items for future agenda. Are there any items for future agenda? If you think of something, contact Dr. Luck or myself. Meetings to be scheduled. The District Improvement Committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 7th at 3:30 PM in the Thompson Community Room. B, Health Insurance Committee meeting on Monday, April 11th, 2022 at 3:45 PM in the multipurpose room at the middle school. C, District Technology Committee meeting on Thursday, April 14th, 2022 at 3:30 in the Tech Lab at the district office. D, regular school board meeting on Monday, April 18th, 2022 at 5:15 PM in the Thompson Community Room in the middle school. Your monthly superintendent evaluation is Section 1, Goals and Vision Setting, and Section 4, Curriculum and Student Support. Remember to click on your adjournment to assess the meeting. There being no further business, meeting is adjourned.